for those of you that care about continuing education credits. It's something we do here. If you want those, then you need to RSVP on Eventbrite and then come tell me who you are so I can check you in. That's how we keep a log in case you get audited on these particular credits. If you don't care about CPEs, then it doesn't matter. It's no big deal. But if you do, make sure, and if you're in Discord, you can message me, DM me your actual name. But if you don't care about CPEs and you don't want to give me your real name, you don't have to. So that's what we're going to say about that. So we're going to jump into our headlines over the past month. Please forgive the state of this. Once Russia started acting up, it kind of consumed most of my eyeball and brain space. So if there's other stuff that I miss, I would love to know about it. We can talk about those as well. But we got a few things here. So I started this list early. Sorry, I probably should have gone back and reviewed this list because I started this several weeks ago. Anyway, so yes, the Ukraine was hit with many things, one of which was a DDoS attack. And a wiper, and yeah. This is kind of an interesting thing. I feel like the United Kingdom's Foreign Office was kind of like secretly relieved when everybody got distracted by the Ukraine situation. So the UK Foreign Office, that's kind of like the British version of the Department of State. And as a part of public records there, they have to post all contracts that they've taken in publicly for public review. And one of them included information about, oh, we needed to pay extra money to use 2 security contracts due to a severe security incident at the the Foreign Office. And so the way they do it, when the contracts get closed and completed and the money gets paid, it gets posted online. So this thing gets posted, it says like, oh yeah, we paid these guys so many thousands of dollars for their help in this security incident. And everybody went, lol, what? And the Foreign Office said, no comment. So, I kept waiting for a big stink to come out around this and some details to get released. But everyone went squirrel, and it's kind of fallen on the back burner. I don't know that we'll ever know any more about that. So that was kind of interesting. Oh gosh, Christmas came early this year.
It just flexed.
So Microsoft pledges to hinder macro enabling. So if you are unfamiliar with this particular issue, macros in Office documents are a significant vector for infections in all kinds of organizations, and because Microsoft has defended their decision to make this possible by default by saying there's so many companies and businesses like that demand this kind of functionality. Security researchers have been complaining about it for years and years and years, and now they're finally pushing out a default policy that will make it harder to enable macros. Right now, if you want to enable macros, it's one click and you're running your macros. After these changes come into effect, you'll have to make 2 clicks, scroll down, click again to enable your macro. But they are also making it more of a default option. Some organizations actually have it now where they can push it out via GPO to certain teams, which honestly, you've kind of always been able to do, and lots of organizations have done that. But me likey. Like it's not everything, but boy, it's better than where we are right now. So it'll be interesting to see how the bad guys, decide to circumvent this with an email that tells everybody the 3 steps and the scrolling and the click again to bypass it. But for now, yeah, it's exciting. Anybody see this? North Korea gets DDoS.
One dude takes
I mean, this is so dumb. Like this is so dumb.
It wasn't even North Korea. It was just a few North Korean sites.
Right. So this is why I used to label this section which one's the dumbest, because like some of the security headlines we have to deal with are really stupid, and I feel like this is kind of one of them. So one dude gets his knickers in a knot because North Korean threat actors were seen targeting US-based security researchers. Can you imagine the audacity? How dare they? And apparently he got super upset because the State Department didn't do anything about it, and the Biden administration didn't do anything about it, and the North Koreans are trying to pee on our Cheerios. We gotta do something about it. So, North Korea's, there's like 4 people that get to use the internet a month.
There's a video about North Korea showing a computer lab. If you turn the audio on, you hear nothing.
Right.
There's no clicking of mice. There's no clacking of keyboards. They're just staring at the monitor.
Yep.
One dude was recorded staring at Google's homepage just for 5 minutes.
So this one dude, he quote unquote security researcher, supposedly white hat, probably gray hat, more likely dark hat. He performs a DDoS on a bunch of sites in North Korea. Of course, like, threat actors in North Korea are not coming out of North Korean IP space. Like, he's not actually doing anything to the actual threat groups working for the government. He, like I said, all he does is probably annoy the 4 people in North Korea that got to use the internet that month. But boy, he was proud of himself, got himself interviewed in a bunch of press pages, and patted himself on the back. Good job. Data breach at News Corp. Massive global media company. They admitted to a very targeted attack at specific journalists' email accounts. So it looked like it was nation-state oriented over very specific issues. The kind of access they had on the email system, they could have used for, kind of much broader and deeper exploitation. But the fact that they were specifically targeting these particular journalists was kind of a red flag. So News Corp put out the piece as much to, in my opinion, as much to alert sources and, people with relationships with those journalists as for any other reasons, to let folks know those private communications via email on an official work account. So let them know that the Chinese were in there looking at them. Oh, I don't know if they said Chinese or not. This one I thought was going to be a bigger deal when I wrote it up than it actually turned out to be. So there's a new SMB vulnerability that was announced, and it looked and smelled a lot like, the Eternal Blue. Like, it seemed like it would have appealed to the same threat actors for the same reasons. We haven't actually seen a lot of exploitation attempts against it. I'm sure it's because everybody went out and posted their patch immediately, so it's no longer an issue. I will never hear about this again. Or the actual exploit chain required to make use of it was so complicated that it didn't actually turn out to be the dire consequence as, like log4shell. You need to know jack squat to be able to get away with that. You need to know Java class. But anyway, but for this particular vulnerability, folks were very concerned about it at the beginning, but it looks like the threat actors that have been using Eternal Blue were using Eternal Blue because all of that code was written for them and perfected for them, and they didn't actually have to know how to do anything with it. This is another happy day for privacy concerns. The IRS had been saying that to use the IRS systems to be able to gain login for not electronic filing, but other record keeping that the general citizenry does with IRS, you would have to apply for, I can't remember what it's called, ID.me or something like that. It was a particular vendor that they had contracted with to provide identity management services for this particular thing, and they were going to require biometric registration, which could be anywhere from your fingerprint to your face to whatever else. Of course, lots of people went, what? Because, it's bad. As concerning as it is for the government to be collecting biometric information on its citizens, in the United States, lots of other countries, people have a headache about that. In the United States, we generally frown towards that kind of stuff. But it wasn't even that. Like it's like this third-party company that the government is requiring you to send your biometric information to. Like that, it just
Great contract.
right. Yeah. Lowest bid. That's how you know it's going to be a good one.
I'm grateful because it took 2 to 3 weeks for some people to be able to verify their accounts. The biggest reason why the IRS said we're not doing it.
Right. So it actually turned out to be more of an efficiency thing than a privacy thing. But if you cared about this for privacy reasons, it worked out in your favor anyways. So, oh yeah, this is really funny. Like because of the timeline of this, like, Russians are shutting down carding sites. They're making a bunch of arrests of ransomware operators, and then they decide to invade Ukraine. Because like I can see the thought process in their heads, like, "Hey Biden, isn't this nice? You've been asking us to help you with cybersecurity things. We're doing that. Don't worry about those tanks. That's fine. You don't need to worry about the tanks. The tanks have nothing to do with you. Oh look, here we arrested some more low-level ransomware operators. Isn't that nice?"
So it's very reminiscent of Iran and getting us to sign the nuclear accord. It's like, we'll stop DDoSing your banks if you'll just kind of
Look the other way. Yeah. Yeah. The United States announced that apparently Russia targets U.S.-based defense contractors. Can you believe it? Oh, the humanity! Oh my gosh. Yeah, so that was a thing too. Oh, this is really interesting, and it didn't make it to the mainstream press. This is something that I picked up off of IEEE. They had a report on physical augmentation. So we don't talk a lot about like transhumanism and the 1980s versions of cyberpunk or the Keanu Reeves Cyberpunk 2077 version of cyberpunk. But it has a really interesting privacy security implications. And this particular company called Second Sight, I think it was, had done a lot of kind of what they build as bleeding edge research in augmentation and bioelectronic implants. And one of their things, now I can't remember if it was the company or the product was Second Sight, but in either case, it was an actual implant along neural links to provide a form of vision to blind individuals. And it wasn't, we're not talking, Johnny Mnemonic or anything, so we're not going full augmented reality here. But it was able to give them some abilities to maneuver around, telling light from dark, certain shapes, and giving them some level of ocular acuity that they had lost either through disease or degeneration. Well, the company got bought up for some of its patents and some of the other research that had been done, and it has since discontinued that product. As a result, individuals that had the implants, some of them have been reporting maintenance issues, headaches, sparking sounds, small levels of shock. Others, where their implants still work, but due to other medical issues, need things like MRIs, which you can't have if you have electronics in you. But there's no longer any documented way or official support to be able to remove, disable, repair, do any of those kinds of things with these implants that folks have in their heads. And it was just the article on IEEE was kind of talking about how this is the not dark side, but this is the result of kind of profit first mentality around bioaugmentation, that people who need these things are jumping on a jumping on board with these companies that don't necessarily have any long-term ability to follow through with the changes that they do. So in some of these cases, like the people are worse off than they were before because the thing's broken, they can't see, and now they can't have other additional medical needs met because of this thing that's in their head. So I just thought I thought it was a really interesting take, and the reason why it was like this particular month was it was in this month's version of the IEEE newsletter. So I just thought that was kind of interesting. A lot of folks might be interested. Conti data gets leaked. Conti sides with the Russia. Anonymous decides to side with the Ukrainians. You're just kind of in, I'm not gonna say uncharted waters, but it's definitely to me interesting to see these non-state affiliated groups start jumping in this conflict. So anyway, so yeah, I find it interesting that when we're talking about the cyber attacks around this crisis, the fact that we would even talk about, like, the fact that Conti is a news item in the middle of all this is very surprising to me. But if y'all haven't seen it, they have begun unmasking certain Conti operators as a result of the leaks that have come out of the Conti group. So that's kind of some really interesting stuff out there that's sort of hot off the press. Yep, Conti source code, chat logs, and full attribution to the individual is starting to come out. So yeah. And with that, this evening we have Matt Moses. He's a pen tester with Walmart. I hope it's okay that I said all that. And if not, I'll edit it in post. He's going to talk to us about JuiceShop, which is a OWASP. If you're familiar with the older Damn Vulnerable web app, JuiceShop is a, dare I say, Web 2.0 version of that. So, all right.
All right, thanks, Jordan, for figuring that out. Cool. Well, I'm going to talk about JuiceShop tonight. This is a very introductory type thing. I'm going to give some good background, I think, and hopefully, even if you've played with it before, you'll learn a few things. Hopefully, we'll survive my colors. I'm sorry, that's I think streaming it's kind of doing it funny, so it's very different color, but it's all good. So, but yeah, it's interesting. So JuiceShop. Let's see here. So just kind of an overview of kind of like where my thought process is with tonight. Like Jordan said, this is very informal. So if you got questions or insights you want to share, just go ahead and speak up. But I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about like what is JuiceShop, then talk about kind of more important pieces like how can you use it, right? How can you deploy it? Lots of different use cases for JuiceShop. I'm going to do a specific demo with Heroku. I don't know if I'm saying that right. That's my kind of first encounter of it when I was kind of putting things together. Really awesome platform. If you have a need for that, it's worth checking out. And then I was going to kind of go through some selected challenges within JuiceShop, just because I was kind of targeting this towards people who are maybe new to CTFs or want to get involved, or kind of at least in my experience, kind of getting into CTF. Sometimes you have to walk into them with like a certain mindset to kind of get the ball rolling. So I was going to do a few of those just for fun. Anyway, just threw this slide in here. Views, statements, opinions are mine and mine alone. So setting the stage, I think Jordan did a really good job kind of introducing this. I've got a few slides here that just talk about kind of vulnerable applications that we've probably seen in the past. Has anybody used WebGoat or remember WebGoat? Another. So these are all projects that have been put out that are intentionally vulnerable for people to go and learn on. So there is WebGoat. There's a whole bunch of them out there, actually. Right? Someone's keeping like a dictionary, but I just grabbed several of them. So maybe this will give some of you some nostalgia. I don't know. There's the extreme vulnerable web application. And the reason I'm doing this is I kind of wanted to kind of frame up JuiceShop, right? And then kind of provide context like, why does JuiceShop exist and why it's relevant. But this is the one I think that Jordan mentioned. I think this one was really popular, the DVWA damn vulnerable web application. Some screenshots there. This is kind of a relatively new one, I think, that I came across when I was kind of preparing things and that I'm going to go check out. But this one specifically, why a lot of these are focused on like websites and like the full stack on how you can take advantage of them. And I don't know how they pronounce their project, VAPI or VAPI, I don't know. But they're specifically a vulnerable web service, right? There's no front end to it, so if you're interested in specifically learning how to attack web services, like this would be a good thing to try out, I think. And Vuln Lab, a couple more of these. There's actually a whole bunch. So what is JuiceShop, right? When I think where JuiceShop kind of sets itself apart from all the ones we just saw is that it's more modern, right? And there's still quite a bit of activity. I've seen several releases from the JuiceShop team this year, so they're still building it. And there's a slide I've got later on that actually talks about the architecture of JuiceShop, but like Jordan alluded to, it does represent kind of a web application that's modern, right? It's Web 2.0, because there is quite a bit of difference today in how things are built on the web versus how they were built 10, 20 years ago. Are there any web developers in the room that were hacking away on websites 10, 15 years ago? I don't know. Maybe not. I can speak from my perspective. So when I was table equals. Yeah. Back when it was just HTML and CSS. Right. Yeah. So I got into computers when I was about like 15. I'm 35 now, so it's like 20 years ago. And so when I consider, and I was doing like specifically web development just a couple years ago on a particular project, and as I was getting up to speed, it was a React application. If anyone's used React, when I was learning it and going through material, and I was just really surprised on how different it is, in 2019, 2020 versus where it was in, and when would it have been 19 or early 2000s, right? So starkly different with the technologies, and we'll see that with JuiceShop. And kind of the key takeaway there is that, and there's still applications that are deployed this way, but kind of the early way of doing things was it was all server-side rendering. Like you would basically have a web browser that interacted with your server, and you'd make a request, you'd send your data in, it would do all of its back-end logic, fetch whatever data it needed, it would compute it all, do all that transactional stuff, and then it would also get the templates and render everything for the HTML that needed to happen and send back the HTML. Whereas today, kind of the difference is a lot of times these apps are getting deployed and your browser receives essentially the entire web application. And often, like especially with like single page applications, like you're not actually navigating to new pages. Like those applications are capturing those clicks and they're navigating to the next page. And behind the scenes now, all that's happening is you're just making web requests often, and you're just sending in JSON and getting JSON back or XML or whatever it is. So it's kind of a paradigm shift, especially for developers and like for security tools. So anyway, I think the advantage that JuiceShop adds is that it's modern, right? They call it modern and sophisticated. Here's a shot of JuiceShop. We're going to look at it in a little bit, so I'm not going to spend any time there. I was kind of interested. So I like the history of projects, and I like words and such, and so I thought this was kind of interesting. Does anybody speak German in here, by chance, or online? Anyway, so I'll probably butcher the word, and no one will know the difference. But anyway, so what's in the name, right? So this is from their project base. He's translating dump or useless outfit into German yields Softladen. Probably need more of a. Help me out, Jordan. You've got a good German accent. Softladen. Thank you. I knew you'd come through for me. So anyway, that can be reverse translated. So when you bring it back, apparently it comes out as JuiceShop, and so that's the name. That's where they get their name. And then the main language behind JuiceShop, I think it's like 100%. It's largely written in JavaScript, but that's just a coincidence. Okay. And then obviously because it's vulnerable, it's got the hole and it's leaking all its juice, right? So we've already kind of talked about this. What differentiates JuiceShop? So if you're into kind of like web development, so kind of behind the scenes with JuiceShop, it's using Node, it's using Angular, and using Express, right? So Angular is kind of like the graphical user interface that makes it really easy to build out the user interface. Node's running on the back end. Kind of an interesting tangent here. I've got a friend who I super respect, and I remember back when I was in my undergraduate, I don't remember, like maybe 10 years ago, he was talking about how cool this new project is, and I don't know if it's specifically Node, it probably was, how they were getting JavaScript to run on the server, right, and to do like computing, right? And just at the time, you know, from my perspective, you know, JavaScript, you know, runs in the browser. It's maybe not very good at that. Like, why would you run on your server? Why would you be trying to do computation? But anyway, here we are, like 2 years later, and Node.js, you know, it's built on top of Chrome's V8 engine, super powerful, super performant, because you know that gets compiled down. But it's just crazy. And I think the thing that's really helped its adoption, right, is that it's really nice as a developer. You're writing your JavaScript for your front end, and then you turn around and you're still writing JavaScript for the back end. And I think that's one of the things that probably helped it explode is you don't have, you know, those context switches. Because I've done development where you do JavaScript on the front end, right, and then you've got, you know, Python in the background, and you're jumping between languages, and so it meant it's kind of a cool thing. But anyway, that was kind of where kind of the modernness of it comes in. This is kind of an architectural picture that they provide, and I've already kind of described it a little bit. On the far left there, you've got that box that contains the browser, and it's just showing you that you've got Angular, and it looks like Material UI running on the front end, delivers that app, and then basically it's just a service layer, just a service API between it and the back end. And like I said, that's a pretty significant difference for like security tools that want to scan these applications. Is they've got to change how they operate, and we'll kind of come back to that a little bit. But then behind JuiceShop, they've got a SQLite database for a lot of this. Apparently they got some NoSQL too, but they package it really nicely, so it's really nice to use. So use cases for JuiceShop. We've talked a little bit about this, I think, but obviously largely for education. Like if you're interested in getting into like web application, you know, penetration testing, I think it's an awesome thing to get started on. I think it's really cool for developers to go get some hands-on concrete knowledge of do's and don'ts. I don't know, it didn't seem like there were a lot of developers in the room, but has anybody attended or been required to view like security awareness training at your company? Just a lot of videos, a lot of slides, a lot of information. Yeah. You know, I've worked at a few different companies, so I'm not talking about anyone in particular, but those aren't always that useful. And I remember once sitting there, I'm thinking, it's like, wow, like if I wasn't in security and didn't already understand some of the stuff, like this would not help me. But I think that's where something like JuiceShop could step in, and that's actually where its roots come from. Is the original creator, he developed this for internal security awareness training in his company, and then they open sourced it right away and kind of kept any company branding out of it. But that's kind of where its roots come from. And like I said, it's really useful too for if you're developing an open source tool or you work at a company and you run a security tool, that you can actually kind of benchmark your tool against like a modern application. And of course, you can use it for capture the flag events. We'll talk, if we've got time, you know, we'll talk a little bit about that. A lot of great support there. And that's kind of been my usage of it and my exposure to it. I've helped Benny Ashley White. For the last several years, he's done a CTF for Bentonville's Ignite school program, which I think is really awesome. If you haven't heard of it, students can go as like part of their workday. As part of their school day, they can go and kind of get hands-on, like technical, like practical training. So I know they've got some sort of nursing program there, and like a culinary program, I believe, and like a technology program. So we volunteer in October to run like a CTF for them, and so that's been a lot of fun doing that. And JuiceShop for the last few years has been very. We've done things in addition to JuiceShop, but it's been a very core component to it, and people seem to really enjoy it. So yeah, I'm not associated with JuiceShop. This kind of seems like a sales pitch slide, but don't get any promotions from them. But these are kind of the reasons why they kind of sell their project out on the internet. We've talked about some of this. It's free and open source. Super easy to install, which we'll see here in a second. It's very self-contained, beginner-friendly, very interoperable. You can use it on a lot of different platforms. We'll talk about all the different deployment methods. It's got coding challenges, but really neat thing. So probably the easiest, if you want to get started with JuiceShop, just the easiest way for anybody to get going is actually just to go to this link here on the slide. So they actually, the JuiceShop team, they publish a Heroku app, and you can just go and hit it. They've got a few of the challenges disabled for security purposes, but for all intents and purposes, if you're just wanting to explore it, you can go right now and dive in and start using it. The one thing I will say is that the JuiceShop application is designed really for one user. So if you're ever using this, like if you're doing this at work for security awareness, or if you're doing it for CTF, each individual really needs, or each individual or team really needs to have their own instance. And we might see that why in a little bit, but that's the way it's built. And so like if you're out here on the live site, you might start getting like notifications saying, oh, you solved this challenge, or you did this, or you did this. And you're like, oh, what did I do? That's somebody else out there on the internet solving it. Unless you happen to get really lucky, right, and stumble across something, which can happen. But anyways, that's probably the lowest bar to hit, easiest one. The second one is to deploy it on Heroku yourself. And I was like astonished at how easy this is. You just need to go register a free Heroku account. Trying to remember what I needed to provide: name, email address, password, the standard stuff. You don't even have to provide a credit card or anything. They give you like, all the free accounts get like 1,000 free, what they call their like Dino hours. And we don't need to get into that, but so a free Heroku account. And then if you got a GitHub account, all you need to do is go out to the JuiceShop project. We'll come back here. You just need to fork it, right? Which if you've been on GitHub before, literally just one button creates a copy, a fork into your own account. And then on their README inside JuiceShop page, I don't have a screenshot of it, unfortunately, but there is a purple button that says deploy to Heroku. You click it, and then you just give it a name, and we'll actually do it here, I guess. And within a few minutes, then you've got your own instance running in Heroku. So, a little bit behind me. All right. JuiceShop. And now I'm just going to find my fork. And I'm just scrolling down to the README, and like I said, there's this big purple button. There it comes. You literally just click deploy. And then with this page here, it should take me to Heroku, and then I just provided a name. And then, like I said, in about 5 minutes or so, like whatever name you give it, your app is going to be available at https://yourappname.herokuapp.com. So it's pretty slick. So yeah, so app name, we'll just call this ArkanSec JuiceShop, like 31, right? And you just click deploy, and that's all there is to it. And like I said, it's going to run through these steps down here. It's going to build the app, publish it out there, and then you'll have a link. So we're not going to wait for that, but super easy too if you want to kind of start playing around with this. But like I said, you don't want to be plagued by notifications from other random people out there in the internet. Yeah, they've got really great support for lots of things. So that's the Heroku deploy. Like it was asked about, like, can you deploy to your own VM? I've done that a number of times. Super easy. But yeah, you can do it from source. They've got package distributions. They got Docker. They got Vagrant. They got Amazon EC2 instances, Azure container. Yeah, personally, if I was doing this, I know I'm kind of showing the Heroku thing, but I would definitely deploy to a VM. And if you're using like the Heroku version, I'd recommend using a VM to access it, right? Because the application is vulnerable to like cross-site scripting and stuff, so you don't know. Someone finds it, you know, then they're gonna mess with you. So, but yeah, so lots of different options to deploy. In fact, one of my backup methods for tonight, I was going to use one of the Heroku apps that I deployed. I've got it running on a VM on my machine here, and I think with that one I did like the package distribution, and it's really easy. Basically, pull it down. You have to make sure you have Node installed, and then basically just an npm start. So yeah, cool. So that's how you can use it. If you don't like spoilers, I don't know. I think these could still be fun, even if you want to do them later on your own. I was going to post if anybody really gets an itch and wants to do this, when they get home tonight, rather than go to bed, and you don't want to deploy your own. I do have one awesome really thing about Heroku is that it's got a really awesome CLI, and so I deployed like 30 of these apps, just scripted, just bang, hit it out last night. So those are available. So I'll post this link in Discord, and you're welcome. I would just say, if you take one of these, just swap it, from available to in use, and that way, somebody else can grab a different one. Anyway, but I'll put that in the Arkansas public channel. But yeah, I'll leave those on. I'm planning I'll tear those down tomorrow morning. And so I'm actually going to use the this first one here for some demos. All right. So the first scoreboard, I mean, so if you're getting into this, or if you're going to recommend this to a friend, I think the first challenge in my mind to do on JuiceShop is to actually find the scoreboard, right? We mentioned a little bit how it's gamified, right? So it's for a CTF. So we're going to go ahead and let this guy load. And if the internet doesn't cooperate here, I can I'll open up my local copy, have it run. So this is the JuiceShop application, and I will say there is a lot of content here. Like I said, I've messed with it on and off for a few years, like prepping for that CTF we do for high schoolers, and I always think like, oh, I'm gonna go do all the challenges, so that way, when any of them ask me a question, I know all the answers. Then I have not been able to get through all the challenges. I think there's like over 100 now, and I haven't kept track how many I've done, but I've probably only done less than a fifth of that. But so anyway, the first challenge, right, is the scoreboard, and this is just my opinion. But like getting started, one of the things that they advertise about JuiceShop on their site is that you can. They claim that you can complete. I'm trying to remember if I'm reading this right. All of the challenges with just a web browser. So as long as you know how to work your way around your web browser, and you're not afraid to hit F12, government's not going to come after you for hitting F12. And like being familiar with like the dev tools and like just like the fundamentals of like how a website works, you can definitely get started. Some of the challenges in my mind do get fairly advanced and kind of introduce you to different concepts, but some of them you'll see like tonight like are super easy, right? So like the scoreboard one, right? The first challenge is kind of unspoken, but it's like find the scoreboard, right? And so like one way of approaching it is just to figure out, okay, well, how does like the website like work, right? I think that's like a big like hacker mentality, like how does it work, and how can I get it to work for my purposes, right? So looking at the links on the left, you can see, and it is really small on the left, but all their links are /contact, like for the customer feedback one here, and for this about us, there's /about, and for the photo wallet /photo-wall. So it already kind of tells you a little bit about some of the conventions that they use. And I don't want to spend too much time on this, but if you're looking for the scoreboard and you know how links like that work, you might try a few things like SB, and see if that loads. So I mean, so this one could be as simple as just hand jamming a bunch of options inside the URL. But to your point though, like if you're familiar with different tooling, you might have tried to create like a dictionary and send a tool after it to see. And if we've got time, we'll kind of do an example of that. But that one, right, we could just complete there right by hand. And so if you're new to CTFs, a lot of times, well, there's flags defined. And so in JuiceShop, this is how this works. Along this green bar here, you've got a notification saying, hey, this is what you did. You successfully solved a challenge, and here's the flag. Now, like the standalone mode, JuiceShop has a scoreboard, and if you're just doing it yourself, that's all that you need. And they do a really good job here of kind of ranking all the challenges. So you can see that, like, I'm just looking at the 1-star challenges, and that there's 12 of them, and it was the scoreboard one that I found here. And so now from this point, once you're in here, now you've kind of got some direction, right? You can say, okay, well, I'm going to start working through the 1-star challenges, and each of these has a description that kind of gives you some initial guidance. And so one of the platforms that I've worked with, and I'm not going to spend very long on it, but CTFd, there's a lot of, if you've done CTFs, there's several different platforms out there. Facebook has one, although I think they've since stopped support on it. But there's CTFd and there's a few others. And JuiceShop actually interacts really well, provides really good support for JuiceShop. And if we've got time, I'll show you a demo of how you can basically use JuiceShop to export all of its data, and you can populate all the challenges in your CTF platform. JuiceShop supports CTFd, it supports Facebook's, and there's one other that I'm blanking on. So if you were to host a CTF for a group, you would want to deploy like a shared scoreboard, like this one here. So different than the individual scoreboard, this is the everybody scoreboard. So people would come in here and they would register as a user or as a team. And as they completed things in JuiceShop, like the flag we just got for signing the scoreboard, I would copy that flag, right, and go find the corresponding scoreboard challenge here, and then submit the flag, and then you get the points. Another reason why I said that JuiceShop works really well for CTF, especially like if you're doing it so that people can learn, is it provides text-based hints, it provides URL hints, and it provides like code snippet hints as well. And JuiceShop's been around for several years, so there's a lot of content out on the internet. So anybody could do like scoreboard challenge, JuiceShop YouTube, and find out what they find a solution. So it's really good if you kind of want to use it as a learning opportunity as well. So anyways, that's one challenge. Super trivial. Yeah, so I'll demo the CTFd JuiceShop import real quick. So like I said, they provide a tool that you can install, and they actually have a documentation page on like how to do like a CTF with JuiceShop. And we won't go all the way through this, but it's called JuiceShop CTF, and you just run it, and then it's interactive, and it asks you like 5 different questions. So Root the Box is the other platform that they support. So you choose your framework, and then you provide it the URL so it can retrieve the challenges. In the past, I've just used the JuiceShop, the Heroku app that they provide. Just leave the default. And then you specify your key. And so if you don't want people just looking up flags on the internet, you can actually provide a unique key to your installation so that all your keys are unique, which that's handy. You just need to make sure that as you're deploying all your different instances of JuiceShop that you keep that key the same across all of them. Otherwise, people won't have the same key and won't be able to claim the flags. And then you configure it. Hey, do I have free text hints or paid hints? So anyway, you run the add to those few questions, and then it spits out a zip that you can import into CTFd. So to make it really, really, really simple. And I think I'll skip over that, but I'll show you the, if you go to settings and you go to, you go to admin panel, and you go to config. You got a backup section here. And this is where, once this loads, this is where you bring that zip file, and you bring it in, and you're basically good to go. Yep, so import. So anyway, really good support there. I'm gonna skip that one. I think the admin logins, kind of interesting, especially I think this is one that kind of starts to push the individual now to think a little bit deeper and to understand a little bit more. So our old friend SQL injection, I think he finally fell off of the OWASP top 10, right? Within the last year or so. Yeah, don't quote me on it, but I think I remember reading that they dropped it from the top 10 or merged SQL injection in. But this is one I like to do with the students when we do that Ignite CTF. Is because it feels a little bit like, I think, black magic, right? Because you stick the string in there and something happens that really shouldn't happen, and you're like, whoa, what just happened? But anyways, I was preparing to talk about this. I wanted to bring in a diagram because I don't think SQL injections are hard to understand, but I think it needs to be framed up right. And I looked all over the internet. I could not find like a good graphic that actually described, you know, what like fundamentally like what's wrong with SQL injection. But if you've worked with databases at all before, I'm sure you're familiar with SQL, right? And the issue with SQL injection, right, is that you are taking untrusted user data and you're dropping it right into your query, which is going to end up getting run. And every developer, everyone should know, and a lot of people have learned now, is that you don't want to do that, right? Any input from the user, you use sanitized inputs, right? The parameterized queries is where it's kind of at. But let's see, I think we're doing pretty good on time. So yeah, so for this challenge, just your basic SQL injection works, right? So we want to log in as an administrator. So you just do, you know, your single tick, which typically, you know, if you know you have SQL injection, it closes off your input, and then you say, or 1 = 1, right? And then comment out the rest of it. To get past the UI, we're just going to throw in some password stuff. It's not actually going to care, and then you just log in. And so for like, kind of going back to your question on like new users, yeah, the confetti's good. Huh? So like for like a new person getting in here, right? Like you probably would have started. I guess that's not even a 1-star challenge. Let's see if we can find it here. It's admin section, right? So actually, this one was called admin login. Login is admin, right? So like the kind of the initial hint or description you're given is, you know, log in with the administrator's user account, and it tells you like what kind of category it's in. And I think this is kind of one of the really big value adds of JuiceShop, is it maps all of their challenges to categories that then you can kind of walk your way back to the OWASP top 10. What was that? Not to MITRE, but to the OWASP organization. They periodically, I won't say every year, every few years, put out like the top 10 vulnerabilities that we run into, and so it maps back to that. Yep. And as a developer, I know that was something that was kind of shared with me a lot, and encouraged, you know, make sure you understand the top 10, you know, and don't commit those unpardonable 10 sins, you know. But they're kind of grouped that way, and then You also have a couple links over here. This one is, let's take a look. Yeah, so this actually takes you to an OWASP cheat sheet on SQL injection. So kind of walking into this challenge, you wouldn't necessarily have to know anything about SQL injection. You just have to say, you understand like, oh, this is grouped with injection. Here's a link to SQL injection. Kind of connect the dots and say, okay, there's something in JuiceShop here that's SQL injection, and then kind of read through this and find some resources. So it's really cool learning tool. Also, if anybody's used, I'm sure people have used Bloodhound before. I was today years old when I learned about the right-click in Bloodhound, where you can like right-click like the lines, and they pop up a nice little dialogue that's kind of similar to this, right? That tells you, kind of provides documentation about like the particular node. It's got a tab like how you can abuse it, and some of them even include like commands you can run. So I was like blown away because I'd always just kind of used it for like trying to understand and recon, but now it's like, oh wow, this is a really cool like teaching tool. So I had a buddy show me that today. But yeah, so cool learning tool. And then you can also do coding challenges, and I think this is where like, especially if you're going to use this or want to use this within your organization, where it really drives home the message to your professional developers, because it lets you look at the code. And so it's kind of this nice little dialogue here. So your first step for this particular one says, first find it, right? So you've got all these lines of code. They've kind of like isolated. You don't have to look through the entire JuiceShop code base. But you can actually go in here and, check whatever lines you think has the vulnerability, right? And so if you're familiar with SQL injection, I haven't actually done this one before, but I think it's line 15, right? Because this is where they're doing their query, and they're taking the unsanitized user data and dropping it right into their string. So hopefully that's the only one in here. But anyway, the idea is you would select, say, hey, that's the vulnerable line of code, and you click submit. We got our confetti, so we know we got it right. But then what's really cool too is they actually provide 4 different fixes, and only one of them is the correct fix. So then you get to kind of like take a step back and say, okay, well, if I see this in code, how am I going to fix it, right? So here's fix 1, and I haven't looked at these yet, but this is JavaScript. So anyway, you can kind of see where the value add is there, I think. So that's that one. So let's see here. So there's a few others in here. I'm going to skip a couple. Unsigned JWT, I think, is kind of an interesting challenge. Has anybody messed with JWTs? Yeah, so this kind of, again, kind of tying back into, JuiceShop is a modern thing, right? JWTs are really popular, and so we can work on this one. And I will do a brief synopsis of JWTs just to provide context to some of this. But we're going to go ahead and find that challenge, though. There's at least 2 JWT ones. There's this one which will work called Unsigned JWT, and then I think there's another one in here that I think is also cool. That is actually a 6-star one, so much more difficult. But that one actually says, forging assigned JWT. So here's your quick, 2-minute introduction to JWTs. So JWTs are tokens, right? Tokens in the name, and it provides a means of authentication. And the reason they're so valuable is that they use cryptography to protect the integrity of the token, and it allows applications to pass these tokens around, or it allows the user to, in a lot of cases, to carry them around, and which declares, says, hey, I've authenticated and I have these permissions, right? And the reason why you can trust a user sending you that token is that it's cryptographically signed. So once you get it, the first thing you do is you go and you verify, hey, did they change it, right? Because they're trivial to change, which we'll see here in a minute. But they're composed of 3 parts. There's what's called the header, and I'll zoom in here. Realize it's pretty small. This application allows a zoom. There we go. Anyway, so there's a header portion, there's the payload portion, and then there's a signature. And that's a JWT. But they are all three pieces are base64 URL encoded. And that was something that I learned this week. I just thought they were all base64 encoded. There's not a lot of difference, but there is some difference. There are some characters in base64 which are not safe to pass in a URL. An example being like the slash, because in your web browser or your client's going to interpret that as like a path divider. That is valid in base64, and there's a couple other characters like that. If you're getting into JuiceShop or web application, penetration testing, I really like Burp Sweep. So you'll see me use that tonight. Super awesome tool. I probably need to experiment with some of the others like Zap, but I kind of got started on Burp, and it's just really feature rich. And the best part, it's written in Java. CyberChef. I've used it a little bit, but not enough for an opinion on it, really. Yeah. CyberChef does a lot of encoding and decoding, right? Yeah, because that is one limitation I ran into Burp, is that it doesn't do base64 URL encoding. Base64 URL, at least that I'm aware of. Anyway, that's how I learned about base64 URL encoding. It's because I didn't realize Burp was not supporting that. And I guess the root cause was I didn't understand that JWTs were not just base64 encoded, so I ran into some trouble walking through this challenge. But I'm going to go ahead and just fire up Burp, and I'm going to turn intercept off and just open a browser. And I'm just going to go steal this link from Firefox, and I think I'll go ahead and close Firefox for tonight. And all this work inside Burp. If you haven't used Burp before, this will be like a little mini crash course. There's a lot to learn from it, a lot more than I can teach you. But that's kind of the basics of getting a browser open. You can configure your browser, obviously, to talk to your Burp proxy, but I discovered that they actually package Chromium inside of Burp, so you can just hit open browser, and all that configuration is done for you. This HTTP history tab is really important. I spend a lot of time here. Basically, you're able to look, obviously, right at all the HTTP requests that are coming through your proxy. So for this challenge, I'm going to start with a valid JWT token, which I'm going to go grab real quick. And I'm just going to do that for registering as a user. And world's worst password, right? I don't know if it's the worst password anymore, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'll use that for my security question. I'll see if this works this time. All right, tells me I can log in. All right, so we're logged in. So I'm going to go back to Burp, and I'm going to look for a request that has the token that's getting passed around. So you can see, like in this GET request here, that the application makes to see, who am I? They've got the token here. It's actually stored as a cookie, so it gets sent by default with each request, but the application is pulling it out of the token and passing it inside this authorization bearer header. So you can probably grab either one, but I think the one that needs to be set, we'll test this, but I think it's the one in the authorization header. So I'm just going to copy it and go back to mousepad, and you'll see here, remember the format here, these periods divide it, right? So I'm just going to kind of hack this one up, delete the period, and drop it down. So this is my header, which we'll look at in a second. This is the big old payload, and that's the information that is dependent on the application. So the application you know, the server would have its own schema saying, hey, these are the permissions or pages or whatever. Basically, you can stick any JSON data in there. And then this last part is the signature. And so like a secure application, before it did anything with the token, it would actually take the signature and verify that it hasn't been tampered with. I'm gonna go ahead and delete it for this challenge because it's gonna be an unsigned token, and so we don't need to pass signature. So I'm gonna take this header first, and one of the other things you need to know about JWT tokens is that in the header it describes how they were encrypted. So there's a handy website. I'm sure you can use, it sounds like you can use CyberChef. This is just one that I found on Google real quick. That you paste in your encoded value, and you can see the plain text. So I haven't used them very much. I don't necessarily recommend them, but it worked for my purposes. Again, maybe you want to use CyberChef or something else. But so typically in the header, you've got two values. You can have more sometimes, and there's different attacks you can take. Sometimes you'll see like an ID for like a key that it references some key on the server. But anyway, this one just has two, and it's kind of I think kind of the bare minimum. But for the algorithm type, you can actually put in none, right? So it's essentially like a downgrade attack. Secure libraries would not allow this, but JuiceShop would. So you can kind of see here, if you look closely, the difference between base64 and URL. And in this really simple example, it's really just that equal sign. So I changed the value, changed my encoding. So I'm gonna go back and I'm just gonna swap out that guy. And then I'm gonna do the same thing here and back to the website, drop in our value. And you can see the payload there, just JSON data. I do need to reference the challenge because they actually give you a specific thing that you need to do to solve this one. And it's you want to impersonate some non-existing user. So if we go, click show all. We'll wrap up with this challenge. It tells you, it says, hey, forge an essentially unsigned JWT token that personates this particular user. So we'll grab that guy's email address, copy that, and then as you expect, you just go in and swap it out. Right, and just kind of sanity check, make sure it looks okay. You could mess with other things, but I think that's the only thing that the platform, the JuiceShop, is actually looking for. So we'll go ahead and copy this guy, go back to trusted mouse pad, and drop it in here. All right, and then what's kind of important for this is I'm just dropping a period here at the end, so that way, it doesn't run into issues when it's parsing, but we're gonna leave that signature blank. So hopefully we did everything right here. But this is technically our unsigned token now. So our header says none. So it's going to allow for this, it shouldn't, but it's going to allow for this signature to go unchecked, unverified. So a couple ways you can kind of do this now. You can be super hacker, right? And we're going to do F12, go into inspect, and look at the, wonder how long I can abuse that, let's see here, and I think you should be able to just drop it inside, replace the token. So now, my application here, my browser is going to use that token. So I think if I just refresh, it should send that token, and hopefully JuiceShop recognizes it. Otherwise, we might have to go into burp and intercept a request. So I had created an account, Matt at nwajuseshop.com. I think I probably broke JuiceShop. So let's actually do this. This is another thing that I like to do in Burp. I can just right-click this request and send to repeater. And I'm going to go ahead and take, well, first, let's sanity check it. Let's make sure this works. I'm going to send this. This was untouched. This was the original, right? This is the /rest/user/who am I. And you can see, you know, it's Matt at NWA JuiceShop. So I've still got that token on the clipboard. I'm going to go ahead and replace both the cookie and the authorization bearer and send this. And it's coming back empty. So something is, we didn't get a JSON issue, but something's not quite right. So let's troubleshoot this. If anybody's got any ideas, let me know. Yeah, send two different ones. Yeah, so I think the one they're looking at, yep, is this one, one in the header. I must have goofed something. Let's just double check it real quick. Oops. Oh, interesting. Wonder how that happened. Wonder if I didn't copy it or something right. So it was still using the old algorithm. Okay, so I'm going to copy that this time. I think I might have goofed with my switching from copy and paste from Linux and Mac. So I wonder if the payload's actually broken. I wonder if it's still the old payload. We'll have to see. So I'll go ahead and replace it. Try to fire it off. Awesome. And so this one comes back the way we expect. And I think if we refresh JuiceShop, hopefully it tells me I solved it. This profile's broken. Go back to the scoreboard. Okay. Okay, well that was a different one. So we provoked a unhandled error. There's my confetti. So I'll replace it in both places. Try to send it. There we go. It was looking in the, oh yeah, I replaced the token one, but I didn't replace the authorization bearer. So anyway, so there's the unsigned JWT one. So lots of cool challenges. I think some of these are actually really practical, especially like the JWT stuff. But there's a ton that you can learn here. So just to kind of wrap up, unless anyone has any questions, if you have any influence in your like security awareness training, like I think JuiceShop, it would be like super awesome to like give developers a chance to go in. I think it would definitely beat the kind of the traditional like here's a video, here's a short quiz to make sure you watch the video. And we've talked about a lot of this already. You can use it to benchmark your tools. So anyway, but yeah, that's all I have.
Thanks. That was a really good talk, and I'll have the video posted. I'm not going to commit to anything less than a week, but it's usually been like within like 2 or 3 days. But if nothing else, by the end of the week, by the end of next week. I wanted to mention this because I know we usually have lots of folks that are new to security. If you haven't heard about this, new to cyber. It's a summit that's coming out in March, done by the SANS folks. We don't promo or endorse or anything like that, SANS, but I know lots of folks think it's a useful tool. So if you're interested, if you're trying to figure out what are the skills that I need, what are the soft skills that I need, either technical or just kind of professional development stuff, that's going on March 23rd through 24th, which this was not planned, but it's super convenient for me that that's happening because we had already decided our topic for April was going to be on career development and IT security. So we've had several technical talks for the past few months. So what we're going to do in April, I've reached out to some hiring managers at some of the big players in the area. This isn't going to be this isn't a job fair or like resume pass around apply, that kind of thing. But we have been talking at the board about how this might be helpful because we do have so many folks that are new to security. We do have lots of students in the area, U of A, JBU, NWAC, that we wanted to provide kind of a forum for. Let's talk about what it means to build your career in security. So that's what we're going to be talking about next month. And I'm probably going to steal anything that I can find. We're stealing from the SANS, from the SANS Summit. That's going to be in March. I didn't know that was going to happen, but it did, and I am not afraid to use it. So that's what we're going to be talking about at our next meeting, which is going to be Thursday, April 7th. We're going to send an email out to people so they know about it. It'll be great. It'll be fantastic. So anyway, so that's, I think it's, we're going to leave it for this evening. If y'all have projects that you've worked with or worked on that you can talk about, either your home lab or projects that you like to work on outside of work or something you can get approval to talk about in work, we're always interested in speakers. And with that, I'll close it up. Thanks for coming out, everybody.